guys, Mr. Ford here. In this video, I'm going to go over the worksheet that we did in class on triangle congruence. Of course, this is introducing or reintroducing and going over the 4 different theorems we have for triangle congruence. The first one being side, side, side. The second one being side, angle, side. The third one being angle, side, angle. And the fourth being angle, angle, side. So let me zoom in here and let's go over that mnemonic that I created and came up with and told you guys about. Remember, and you should probably do this anytime you take a test, whether it be here in geometry class or for the LEAP or for ACT, maybe even ASVAB or work keys. Remember, triangle congruence is based on 4 different theorems. First is, let me make sure I have the right size pen here. It's going to be kind of big if I do that. Let's see. All right, so the first is side, side, side. The second one is side, angle, side. The third one is angle, side, angle. And the fourth is angle, angle, side. And if you recall, I came up with a mnemonic, meaning a way to sing it with melody and to help you remember it. And that is side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side. So let me do that again for those of you in the back. Maybe you didn't hear it. And that is side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, right? So if you start saying that in your head over and over again, you're going to start remembering it. And when it comes time to take the test, you should have no problem whatsoever. So what we're doing here for this first set of problems is state if the 2 triangles are congruent. If they are congruent, state how you know. So let me zoom in on number 1. Now, when you're doing these worksheets or when you're taking a test, you cannot assume anything with the exception of a couple of different things. So first, when I see that this angle has this red arc in it, and this angle has this red arc in it, I'm going to assume, since it's 1 arc each, that those angles are the same. Those are congruent angles. And since this line in the middle is shared between both triangles, I can assume that this line is congruent to itself. Okay, so this is one of those rare occasions that I can say, okay, this line is definitely congruent to itself. So if you want, you can put 2 hash marks, right? Because that's going to mean that that line is congruent to itself. Now, here's the thing. You have another set of lines right here that are congruent. The problem is you do not have the angle in between them that you need for side, angle, side. You don't have the third side that you need for side, side, side. You do not have a second angle that you need for angle, side, angle. And you do not have, you do not have a second angle for angle, angle, side either. Now, I'm going to say that this one is not congruent. And that's what the textbook, or that's what the people that made these worksheets say, right? If you look at the answer key, this one's not congruent. There is a way that you could look at it and say, okay, well, maybe it is congruent, but that would be kind of digging a little deep. And that would be as if you said, okay, these lines here are parallel lines and this is your transversal. Then if that were the case, you could say that this angle is congruent to this angle because they're alternate interior angles. The problem is we do not know if those angles are parallel because it's not given, right? So we cannot assume that they are, and we cannot assume that those are parallel lines with a transversal. But if that's what you were thinking, you're on the right track. You can't assume if it's not given to you. There are a couple of cases that you can assume in here, and we'll go over each one as they come along. Number 2, take notice. You have this angle here. Let me use this yellow color for this first angle. It's got one line. This is the same angle here. It's got one line. Then you have this second angle here. Notice it has two lines, right? So those angles are congruent. There's one other thing you have that's not marked, but we know from the previous problem that this is the truth, this is the case, and that is that this line is congruent to itself. If you wanted to, you can put a hash mark there just to show it. But now you have two angles and you have a side that is in between those two angles. So you have angle, side, angle, right? So you have angle, side, angle. In order for angle, side, angle to be applicable, you need the side to be in between the two angles. So let's look at number 3. Number 3, you're given one side is congruent to another side. Then you're given a second side is congruent to another second side. Then, just because it's come up in the previous two problems, you know that this side is going to be congruent to itself. So therefore, you have 3 sets of corresponding sides that are congruent. So of course, this one would be side, side, side theorem, right? Side by side congruent. Side, side, side congruence. Number 4. Now this one, you're given one angle on each, and you're given one side on each. But is there anything else there that we can assume to be true or that we know? Is there another theorem? There is, in fact. And it goes back to one of the first things we taught you in class, which is, oops, that's way too thick. Let's go back. I need to fix that. And that is that these angles are going to be congruent. Well, you might ask, why are those angles congruent, Mr. Ford? Because these angles, if you recall, are what we call vertical angles. Anytime you have two intersecting lines like that, the angles they create are vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. So, in this case, we have an angle, we have a side, and another angle. And notice the side is between those two angles. So this one would also be angle, side, angle. Number 5, you're given congruence of one angle, which is the same as this angle. And this line that you see is going to tell you that this side is congruent to this side. But take notice, that's all you have. You don't have another side. You don't have another angle. So this one, there's no way for it to be congruent. So this is not congruent. Number 6, once again, we have some vertical angles. We know those are congruent. So we have a given angle that's right and another angle that's right. And you have to remember, it doesn't need the little arc mark, because it's a right angle. All right angles are congruent, right? All right angles are congruent. So we can say we have an angle. You see that we have a side. And then, if you recall, because these angles are vertical angles and they are congruent, then you have the angle you need. So this one would be angle, side, angle. I'll do number 7 and number 9. Well, we'll zoom in on number 7. It's going to be hard not to see both of them. Okay. What we have here is we have an angle, and look, the illustration is off. I get that. But you can see if they give you that mark, that arc mark, that means that angle is congruent. Now, I would question whether or not this is congruent. And I just know that how the software that makes these things work sometimes, this is one of those glitches. But nevertheless, if you notice, you have a side here and an angle and then another side. But over here, you have a side, then an angle. So these do not match. This would be a side angle side if the other one would match. But since it doesn't, and this is side angle, there's no congruence here. Looking at number 8, here, notice we have a side, one side, then we have a second side, and I just like going in order based on how the hash marks are. And then, of course, we have a third side, so that tells me that we have side congruence. Now, one thing to note about side, since it's the first time it comes up, is anytime you have two triangles and the corresponding side lengths are the same, it doesn't matter how you assemble it, it's going to be the same triangle. If I gave you 3 side lengths, 1, 2, 3, and I told you to create a triangle based on that side length, and I gave the exact same side lengths to 5 other people, all 6 of you will have the exact same triangle. There's no other way for it to be formed. They may be oriented differently. It may be, you may have one that looks like this, and then you may have one that looks like this, but they would all be the same size and same shape. There's no way around it. So that's something to deal with triangle congruence that you need to know. If you have 3 sides that are the same, they're always going to be the same triangle. That's why we have a theorem of side. But notice we have no theorem for angle, 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 because you could have the same three angles, but the side lengths could vary. You would have triangles that are similar. They would be the same shape, but not necessarily the same size. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so for number 9, notice what you have. You have a side and a side. You have another side and another side. And then that thing that's hidden in plain sight, which is the two angles that are vertical angles. So this angle and this angle would be congruent because they're vertical angles. Now, this one, you have a side, check. You have an angle, check, and another side. And the thing that's important, so this, of course, would be side, angle, side. The thing that's important is that the angle, this angle here, is in between the two sides. So these two sides, the S and the S, form, those two sides are the line segments that form that angle, right? So side, angle, side, those sides have to form that angle, okay? So that's just one thing to keep in mind. The angle has to be between the two sides. In this last one, number 10, you have one side length that's the same. Then you have another side length that's the same. And then, just like before, if they're sharing this middle side, that side length is the same also. So for this one, of course, you would have side, side, side congruence. All right, so that's the first worksheet. Moving on to the second worksheet. This one says, state what additional information is required in order to know that the triangles are congruent for the reason given, right? So they're saying they can be congruent. They're just missing a reason. So what is that reason? So for this first one, number 11, angle, side, angle. You have one angle. And I want you to notice something. Notice how they have these arcs are in different places, right? That doesn't mean that's not the same angle. The reason they do that is because if they were to put one giant arc all the way, it would indicate that it was this whole big old angle. But they're not. They're saying that that's two separate angles. So you have the angles. You have a shared common side, right? So that's what you have. What you're missing is this angle here and this angle here. Now, when you name those angles, you have to be sure to use the 3-letter designation. And the vertex letter U needs to be in the middle. So for the first one at top, you could say angle DUT is congruent to angle, and then use the same. So we went DUT. So this time you would say SUT. SUT. Now you could also say angle TUD is congruent to angle TUS. You could do that also, but either way is good. If you did that, it would give you the angle side angle congruence you need. Number 12, side angle side. So we have our first side here that's shared. That's this one. Then we have our angles. They're both squares, so they're both right angles. So now what we're missing is that second set of sides. And remember, it has to be on both sides of the angle, so it would be these sides here. It has to be those sides. So the way that we would write that would be line segment XK is congruent to line segment VW, or we could say KX is congruent to WV. Either way would be okay. Number 13, side, angle, side. So let me go ahead and get my highlighter. First one, we have a side. It's given. It's this side here at the bottom. The next thing is our angle. We have an angle. It's the square, these right angles. So then what we're missing is that second side. And it would have to be this side here that helps encapsulate that angle, right? So what would that be? Well, this side would be line segment CA is congruent to line segment LJ, right? Or we could write it as AC is congruent to JL. Either way is okay, right? Let me zoom out a little bit. Number 14. This one, it's a little easier because this one is angle then side, then angle. Now, notice I didn't color the side, but I need to because it needs to be the one in between the two angles. So therefore, the side would need to be this side here in between those two angles and this side here. So how would we write that? Well, we would say line segment ED is congruent. And notice we're going from two lines to one to line segment KJ. Or we could say DE is congruent to line segment JK. Just kidding. Okay. Just a few more left. Bear with me. Number 15, side, angle, side. We're given a side. Boom. Boom. We're given an angle. Angle, angle. And now we need one more side. So that side, of course, needs to be on the other side of the angle. So it's going to be this one and this one. And to identify what we're looking for, we just say line segment JI is congruent to line segment. And then notice I'm going from J to I. So this time I would go from T to S. TS. Or I could write it as line segment IJ is congruent to line segment ST. Either way would be okay. Number 16. Angle, side, angle. You have their angle. It's given. Those are congruent. Then you have your side. It's given. Those are congruent. Now, you need another angle. Well, guess what? it has to be this angle here that shares that side. So your angle would be here. When I identify that angle, the way I would is using the 3-letter. I would say for this first one, angle MLK is congruent to angle, notice I went MLK. So this would be STU. STU. Now, I could also do KLM is congruent to angle UTS. That would be acceptable also. There is one other way. And because these are two separate triangles, I would accept, if you were writing it, I would accept angle L is congruent to angle T. And that's because that's the vertices where those angles occur. If this were two triangles that shared a space, you would definitely, or shared a line for that matter, you would definitely need to use the 3-letter designation. I would accept this. Some books, some teachers may not, but I would. Number 17, side, side, side. This is kind of easy, right? Because you have your side here. Then you have your shared side. So, of course, what you're missing is these sides here. And those would be line segment RS is congruent to line segment. Of course, notice I went from R to S, so this time I go from D to Q. DQ. You could also write it as SR is congruent to QD. Either way would be acceptable. Okay, remember that's side, side, side. Anytime you have 3 side lengths in corresponding triangles that are congruent, 3 corresponding sides are congruent, those triangles are going to be congruent. Last one, number 18. Side, you're given one side. Angle, guess what? You have some vertical angles here. Those are going to be congruent. And then what you're missing is that third side. That third side would have to be here and here. But notice they share a vertex. So make sure when you write them, WV, line segment WV is congruent to line segment, and then you started with W, went to V, so this time you go from M to V. MV. You could also say VW is congruent to VM. Either way would be okay, but I would probably stay away from naming the vertex point as your first point on the line segment. All right, so that's it for this video. That went over all the problems from the worksheet. Remember, put this mnemonic in your head, write it on your paper. I'm going to sing it one more time, and that's it. Side, 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 angle, side. Angle, side, angle, 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 side. You know I love you guys, and I'm only meaning what's for the best. So when I sing this song one more time, it's for your benefit. Side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side.